Okay, today we will discuss one of the most important concept in Java technologies. What is that important concept? Is object-oriented programming. OOPS concept, that's what we call. So, object-oriented programming languages. Now, what are object-oriented programming languages? Object-oriented programming languages are those languages that adapt, that implement the concepts of object-oriented analysis and design methodology. Right? So now what is object-oriented programming concepts? What are object-oriented programming concepts? So there needs to be set of rules a language must follow in order to qualify itself as an object-oriented programming language. Now, what are those set of rules? That's what we're going to look at right now. Now, some of the rules, some of the concepts. First thing is object-oriented programming languages will, instead of talking about set of the rules and other things, will elaborate the rules later, but the rules are derived from the features of object-oriented programming. Now, object-oriented programming features would be: first is object itself, second one is class. So this is not the order, but these are all the features. Then what do we have? Encapsulation, then abstraction, and inheritance and polymorph. These are the main features of an object-oriented programming language. Now, if a language has these features, that's when the language is considered to be as an object-oriented language. Right? So, now we're going to see what are the features of an object-oriented language. Now, these are the features. Now, we're going to see each of them together. Now, how many of you know about any of these features? Now, we'll discuss these features in a concept-oriented way. Now, we will start off with the most important two features in OOPS concepts, which is an object and a class. And we're going to cover all these things later once we know about object and classes. Okay. Now I'm going to wipe off this board for a moment because I'm going to use that things. So you understand these are the basic and important features of an object-oriented programming. Now let's start with object or class. Right. Why did we start with class and the order was object? There is a reason for it. We will see what is the reason in a moment. You yourself will answer the reason. Okay. Now, what is a class? Class is a specification of something. Class is a blueprint. Class is a template. These are all very good English words to be given as definitions when you write exams. But what do they mean? What do you understand by specification yourself?
Specify what are the attributes which it holds.
No. Let's not get into detail. Get into general things first, then we'll get into detail later. In general, what do you understand about specification? I'm sorry? No. Now you go to a shop and you want something. What do? You specify it. Right? There will be some person at the shop, you want to buy something. What are you doing? I want a pen which is blue in color, and which I can write even on a thick paper, which I can put in my pocket, and it's not going to, the ink is not going to come out of it or something like that. What you are telling him is a specification, your requirement, something of that sort. But that specification is going to, looking at your specification, what is he going to do? He is going to identify, visualize everything and going to locate an object for it. Now there are two things now. One is specification, another is the object. Now it is possible for the person to show 4 pens for the specification you have given. You have given a specification. Based on the specification, this object is valid, this object is valid, this object is valid. It can be difference in the companies, it can be difference in the sizes or whatever it is. But there are multiple objects that got mapped to your specification. Now is this something which you need to which is differentiating between the pen and the specification? I mean, is there something that is differentiating between the specification and the pen itself? Yes, specification is different and pen is different. What is the major difference? Specification is virtual. It's something which is not existing, which you cannot feel, touch, which you cannot hold. I'm talking about specification, it is something imaginary. When I'm talking about an object, it's not imaginary. It is existing. It's called an entity. Now this object is object. Specification means class. Okay? So I will discuss more about class and object. I'll give more examples on that. But basically you need to understand what is a class. Class is a specification of an object. It talks about how the object is going to look like. Okay? But does class exist? Does class exist? So does class exist? No. It exists in imagination. But objects exist in the world. In real world, objects exist. You can feel, touch, you can say that this is an object. But class is more of conceptual thing, which is going to be imaginary. Now, the definition of class, I said was, class is a specification. Class is a template. Now, what is a template? Now, you go to, you see a job or job opening for something and you want to prepare your resume. You want to prepare your resume for a particular job or something. You don't have a resume. What is the first thing you do? You'll ask your brother, your sister, or somebody who is in a good position, working for a good company. You think, whom you think is a good software engineer and he has done a lot of work in doing his resume. And you ask his resume. Maybe not his complete resume, and you'll say his name is Suresh. Hey Suresh, can you send me the template of your resume? Can you send me the format of the resume? Now what he's going to send is a template. What is template? It does not have all the values. It does not have your percentage. It does not have all your date of birth, what your projects and all these things. It has a space like where to put the address, where to put the projects, where to put the educational qualifications. It has various sections. Now, this is called a template. Got what I'm saying? Based on the template, you are going to prepare a resume. Now, template is real. That means template is not your resume. When you are looking at a template, or the template even can be set over the phone. It need not exist as a document. It said first you need to include this. Now what you do is you try to write in a paper. Now first I'll have this next. Then you put your qualifications. Then you put your projects. So this is a template. I mean, it's going to talk about how your resume should look like. Getting what I'm saying? So there is a difference between a specification and an object. In each of this definition, I'm trying to compare. I'm trying to differentiate between a class and an object. Okay, so what's class? That is going to talk about the object. So now what is template? This is an example. Class can also be called as a template. Now another definition of class will be class is a blueprint. What is blueprint? When you want to construct a house, you go to the architect, engineer, and ask him to prepare a plan. You prepare a plan and they will say this is your blueprint. Now they come to you and say, I created your house, now take your house. Will you agree? This is, you ask for the construction of a house, they construct it and take it. And they give you a blueprint. You will not accept it. Why? Because what he has given you is a class. He has not given an object of the class. Now what is going to be the object of that class is your house. You get what I am saying? Blueprint is going to talk about how my house is going to look like. That means class is going to talk about how my object is going to look like. But class is not object. Now blueprint, the paper is going to exist. It's not about existing of the paper. Paper will exist and the lines and everything will exist. But the house, is it existing? In the blueprint. In the blueprint, is the house existing? No. It's a drawing. So it is concept. The implementation is the object. So class is a concept, object is the implementation of the concept. There are different definitions of class. And this is a basic thing you need to understand in Java or any object-oriented programming language. This is a basic thing that you need to know what is a class, what is an object. Okay? Now you got the difference between class and object. Okay. Now let's take some other definition, take a different approach and give you some more information on classes and objects. Now you go to your friend and say, hey, I purchased a bike yesterday. What is the first thing you ask him? Party. Right? Apart from party. Apart from party. What is that thing? You want to ask him? Very good. Why which bike? I mean, price and all these things will come later. But first you wanted to know which bike. Why? Because what he said, what he actually told you is a class. But what you are expecting is an object. Because class can mean so many things. Class is not real. You cannot pinpoint an object from a class. But when you tell about an object, you exactly know. So if you say, I purchased a Hero Honda CBG, he said Hero Honda CBG. Then you will ask other questions. Price, what color, what these things, and those are next things. But first thing is you want to locate the object. Get what I'm saying? So that is identification of the object from the class, from the concept. I have a concept, and from the concept I need to identify my object. So class will talk about how the object is going to look like, and object is the implementation of the class specification. Okay. Now next most important thing is object. What is object? Object is of class. Object is the implementation of the class. In other words, it's called instance of class. Okay? Class is an entity. What is entity? In English means entity means that which is going to exist in real. Something is an entity means it is existing. Soul is not an entity. Body is an entity. Get what I'm saying? Body is existing. Soul is existing, but it's not existing in real world. So, soul is like glass. Body is like an object. And in this case, we are not talking about body implementation of soul. This is different. We are talking about what is the difference between existing and non-existing. Class will be a concept. Concept will exist as a concept, not exist as an entity. Objects will exist as an entity. This is the difference between a class and an object. Okay. Now, next most important thing we are going to look is details of a class and an object as well. Okay, so I can wipe this off. Now we know the classes, blueprint, specification, template, in some books we will see different definitions of classes as well. Say stereotype or something. But no matter whatever is the name given to it, the meaning of that will be the same thing. And this is where people get confused. There are too many definitions for a class and an object, too many names used for it in different kind of books, different training centers, different engineering colleges, different people use different names. But what you need to understand at the end of the day is the concept. Name is, you can give any name to it. You understand the concept? Then you will understand everything. Now, what is class in terms of software? Now we talk class in terms of software, now object-oriented programming, all these things. Now class in terms of a program. We're getting a little bit deeper into internals of a class. Class is specification, class is a template. All this is fine. But what is class in terms of programming? In terms of coding, is class is collection of data and methods. What is class? A class is collection of data and methods. Now this data can also be called as state, and methods can also be called as behavior. Now what is state? Data. What is method? What are methods? Behavior. I mean, any name can be used. Class is collection of state and behavior. Is it correct? Class is collection of data and methods. Class is collection of variables and operations. Operations is a different name given to it. Okay? Now, methods are very similar to your functions also. In C, you call them functions. In procedural language, you call them functions. In object-oriented language, you call them methods. All means the same thing. But in Java, you're going to call them as data, methods, or state or behavior. You don't normally call them functions. Okay? But all this means, I'm giving you similar concepts relating to methods. state variables, and you can also call as attributes. Attributes of class. Somebody says, what are the attributes of class? What do you understand from that? These are the data of the class. So what is class? Class is a collection of data and methods. Now, what is data? All the variables you declare in a class. All the variables, whatever the data. What are the data? Your variables. So you store some values, right? Int I is equal to 10. I is a data. Float f is equal to something, 10.3 or whatever. String s is equal to Dinesh or whatever. All these things are called as data. Now what are methods? Methods are behavior. Functions. Methods are some procedures. That means set of instructions. So if you take the example of the bike class. In a bike class, what could be the data? Color, name, number of wheels. All this could be data. Data will have values. Now what are methods? Start, drive, fuel, repair. These are all methods. These are all behavior. That is the difference between data and methods of a class. Data is related to storing values. Methods are for functionality. Now, all methods act upon the data. You know what I'm saying? Methods can act upon the data, but data will not act upon methods. Data will be used by methods. Using methods, you can modify the values of data. Using methods, you can modify the value of data. But with data, you don't trigger any methods. So, in a class, you have data and methods. Methods are functionality and data is storage. So, you act upon the storage and you change the values of data, whatever way you want it. Okay? So, you understood what is in general, what is a class in terms of coding. In terms of coding, all variables. Class will contain variables and class will contain methods. Now, a class can contain only data without any methods. No problem. That's valid. A class can contain only methods without data. That's also valid. But normally, class will contain data and methods. Normally. But there is no rule that it should contain data when it has methods. It may have zero data with only functions. It may have only data without any methods. You can define classes like that. But normally, you will have both data and methods. Now, what is an object of this class? What is the object of this class, right? The object of this class would be data and methods. This is one object of this class. Now, this is another object. Now I have two objects of this class. That means each object is a separate instance of the class. Object is an instance of class, but each object is separate. That means this object is having its own set of data. This object is having its own set of data. Now take example that the bike class. The bike class can have two objects of Hero Honda CVT. This is Hero Honda CVT1 H1. This This is Hero Honda CBG 2, for example. Now, the data will it be same for both of them? Will the data be same for CBG 1 and CBG 2? The definitions of the data will be same. That means color, name, and definitions will be same, but the values can be different. That's why this data is independent of this data. Though the definitions are same. So if name is here, the name is also here. Why? Because they are objects of the same class. Whatever you define here is applicable for all the objects. But however, the values needs to be different or same, or but it can be also possible that the values are different. And that is why in memory, each of this object is going to occupy separate space. Why? Because each one requires separate memory. Now, if this object and this object share data, if this object value of color is black, this also will become black. Why? Suppose let's say this data and this data is shared like this. Okay. Now, in this data, the value of color is black. The value of color is black. For this object, Hero Honda, which is a black, actually a black Hero Honda, this is fine. But this is a red CBC. The value of this is black, which is wrong. So each object needs to maintain its own state, its own data. And that's why each object is stored separately in memory. So this is going to have data. This is going to have separate data. Now this is why object-oriented programming is a real plus. That means in procedure programming, what happens is data is not, data is not specific to some operations. Data is shared among all procedures. This common data. Because of common data, what happens? You have a lot of problems, something of this sort, which I showed you. But in object-oriented programming, each set of operations can have its own copy of data, so that other things will not come and change these things. That means other functionality is not dependent on this data. Each operations, each functions can have its own set of data. It can manipulate its own data. So data and its own functionality can be grouped together. This is nothing but encapsulation. I mean, we will discuss these things in tomorrow's session. But you have to understand what is a class and what is an object. Class is the concept, object is the implementation. Now, in general, class does not exist, right? Bike does not exist, but Hero Honda bike exists. Where does it exist? Maybe in my home, on the road, I can feel it, touch it, and see it. Right? It exists in the real world. But how about objects? What do you call as existence of object? Can you touch a Java object? You cannot touch a Java object, right? It's a programming language. Now, what is existence for objects in terms of Java? In real world, we know that existence is existing in the real world. I mean, I can feel it, touch it. But in terms of programming, what do you consider as existence? It means existence in memory. Object is existing in memory. Class is not existing in memory. Now, memory means not your hard disk. You will write a class and save it in a file. That is not existing in memory. Memory means your program memory. Typically your RAM. Okay? In Java, memory is divided into heap and stack. In Java, memory is divided into two sections called heap and stack. And all objects you create in Java are stored in heap. So when do you say an object exists? If the object is stored in heap, then you can say that the object is existing. But class will not be stored in heap. Class will not exist in heap. But objects are going to exist in heap. Heap are generally called as memory. So class is not going to exist in memory, whereas the object is going to exist in memory. Each object is going to exist separately in memory. And that's why one object is different from another object. Now how do you say one CPG is different from another CPG? Though each object is having exactly the same things. Same black color, same black, take off the number, there is no number plate. Everything is same. There is absolutely no difference between each of them. How do you say this object is different from another object? I am talking about two objects of the past for which data is exactly same. The values of data is exactly same. Now, are the two objects same or different objects? Different. Now, if I have black CPG, same as that of, what's your name? I forgot. Samanvai, right? So, Samanvai, you have a Scooty Pep, and I also have a Scooty Pep. All of both of everything is same except the number, and then they are put there. And I go to her home and I pick up her Scooty Pep and come off and say, "This is mine." Immediately, what will you say? No, this is mine. It's in my home. Yours will be at your home. Right? You are differentiating the objects in terms of locations. Getting what I'm saying? Yours. Now mine is at my home. Yours is at your home. So we will go together to my home and see that my vehicle is located there and your vehicle is located here. Then I realize, oh, these two are actually different. That means they are existing in different memory locations. Even in Java, it can happen that data is same, but these two objects are different because they exist in different places in memory. How do you differentiate from one object to another object? They are existing at different memory locations, though the values are exactly same. Okay? So this is difference between one object instance and another object instance. In Java, every object is a separate instance. It will have its own set of data, it will have its own set of methods. Okay? Okay, now I'll let you go today.